Anything else? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? And then we'll go to the addendum that was sent out earlier today. Any questions? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion in a second to approve that. Colin?
I will not be voting in favor of the addendum. As stated previously, I prefer to have these things presented to myself sooner than the day of. So I will be not voting in favor.
Anyone else? You need a motion in a second.
Yep, I'll make a motion.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, that report is approved. Thank you, Joyce. And then we will move on to the meal pricing, and that's Angela. Yeah. In the corner there. Okay.
Yes, in Word book was included just the yearly memo for the school meal pricing. So it's standard practice to have this approved on a yearly basis, but we're kind of in a atypical situation where all meals are free for students. So we just still wanted to go through and have this approved after this school year when the meals are no longer free. These prices would still be in effect. So just kind of wanted to make you aware of what the prices, would be. We are required by the state to report what our equity is in the food service fund every year at the end of January, and that determines whether we are required to raise prices, like in a typical setting, and especially with the COVID reimbursement being higher at this point, we've actually benefited in our fund balance and have a lot more money in that fund balance for food service than we have historically. So we've been able to purchase a lot more equipment and kind of use that to help us get ahead in those in that way. But that's all very protected money. It has to stay within Fund 50. So I guess for your information at this time, all meals are free, but these are the most recent approved prices, and they would go in effect and essentially be reapproved before we would start charging for meals again next year.
Yeah, it doesn't appear as though there's any change to the current prices, correct? Okay. Any questions for Angela before I entertain a motion? Anybody want to make a motion to approve in a second?
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Angela, you're done as well, I guess. Then I will turn it over to the superintendent for the district activity update.
All right, so today actually is the first day that we welcome all of our staff back. So our staff are in their buildings working through some orientations and some protocols within their buildings. So we're excited about welcoming all of our staff back. I know that this year that has been no easy feat with principals and staff getting together to hire staff and just getting ready. We're very grateful for all of our custodians and maintenance folks who have been working all summer, getting our rooms ready and our teachers and our classroom ready. The technology folks that have worked with all of our staff to get their technology. And we're excited that in a few days, our kids are going to be here on Monday. And we have a planned in-service today. So it's a mixture of working in your classrooms and working with your peers and in some meetings. Same thing happens tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we actually will end the in-service with a welcome back kind of presentation and fun activity at 3 o'clock at Ron Rubik Field. So we'll have an opportunity for all of our staff to gather, celebrate, provide some messages, have a few giveaways, and say thank you. And Friday then will be an off day for our teaching staff. And then Monday, our kids come. So we're excited about that. With that, we've had lots of different staff members who have been in the buildings with their professional development. We have had many co-curricular events. Our football team has had a game already. Volleyball team has traveled, cross country is in the mix. So we've got a lot of things going on. So we're excited about that opportunity moving forward to welcome all of our kids back. I think that we've done a lot of work this summer, and I think we're ready to go. So,
any questions for the superintendent?
Linda Kratz just emailed us that the live streaming is not working. So sorry to interrupt, but
that's okay.
Yeah,
that's what I was kind of circling around for. So I'm pretty confident that the live stream should be up now because I had to recreate the meeting. So I don't know how long ago she sent it to you.
She just sent it while you were talking.
So I will, just triple check here to make sure that that's happening.
I can see the icon says live and is blinking, and it looks like it says a number
Yeah.
up here.
So-
So I think that means that's on.
It is possible if, that because I had to change it, I know Jessica, our tech person who's behind the scenes, has to go back to the website and change the link. That makes sense, so that the link that you click on the website is the new live stream link. If that makes sense. So hopefully that people will have that.
Several people have asked why there might be sirens happening. Has anybody kept up with, is this a weather alert that we can be concerned about?
Allison was pretty,
I have not gotten
Yeah.
any.
Heavy on the way in.
For severe weather warning.
yeah,
Well, how safe is this building, right?
Yes, very safe. I would get a text if we have a tornado warning.
Yeah.
Had to change. So I did not get that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, thank you. Then the next thing would be the 2021-22 COVID-19 protocols.
Yeah, I think, just wanted to have an opportunity today to talk a little bit about the recommendation, for, what we're going to start the school year. Get feedback from board, have an opportunity to, conversate, based on my recommendation and based on what the board's thoughts are. So definitely we know that our return to school plan includes everything that we can do to make sure that we can continue to have a face-to-face model. We know from our past perspective that working and learning in a face-to-face model is absolutely the best protocols. So as I review the information that I've been given from health professionals, from our federal government, from our state government, from our local county health professionals, and from our school nurses, I will make the recommendation that the board consider a mandate for masks inside for all students and staff. And the rationale behind that is not something that I haven't thought a lot about. I'm concerned about the ability to stay open. I do personally prefer to not wear a mask. I think we all would prefer to just come to school and be free of not having to have a mask. But I also know that there is one consistent measure that we have been used to and that we know how to do, and that is wearing a mask. And that will help mitigate some of the things that would allow us to do things that we weren't able to do in the past. For example, I would not at this point recommend that we would wear a mask and continue to cohort in classes or have separate classes. I would allow kids outside to play in their groups. We would continue to have lunch in a typical fashion. We would have outdoor activities and indoor activities that would not limit the number of people who are at that. Obviously, whatever recommendation we use moving forward, there is no doubt that we'll have to be nimble and make adjustments to that. And so again, I do know that we have positive cases of students will be coming to our buildings next week or won't be able to because of that. We have conversations about staff who have had positive cases, and we're currently working through their protocols. I do know that universal masking would provide us with with the ability to provide less quarantining for those staff members or students who are vaccinated. And I think that would provide us with an opportunity to start the school year in a model that will be safe and sustainable for time to come. I would then be looking at regular conversations with the board about what our future might look like and if we need to make changes on any of our protocols moving forward. But I think the first and foremost protocol that we would like to discuss, and I guess I would recommend, is universal masking. So I'll pause there and take questions or feedback or comments.
Hey, one question just before we get any further is, this is not an actionable item, Dave. So can the superintendent make this recommendation without any, no vote from the board, I guess is what I'm saying, because there is no vote now.
I don't believe that it's necessary for the board to vote to take action. The superintendent can implement directives for the school. We can react to that. and then take action.
Is it possible to table this issue until we can make it an actionable item that the board actually decides on the recommendation?
We can pretty much do anything we want, right? As far as taking further action.
Right, but since it wasn't an actionable item today, we couldn't make it an actionable item today, correct? Because of noticing the public, or?
We shouldn't take action if we haven't noticed it,
Yeah.
correct? That doesn't mean though that we can't provide input as to the direction that the superintendent is going to take. So for example, if the superintendent chooses to require masking and it starts, let's say tomorrow, the staff will be in tomorrow. We would have to then set up a meeting to take action to either approve or modify that, if you wanted to do that, yes.
Okay, so if the 7 of us did not want the mask mandate, we could not do anything to stop it until our next meeting, is that correct?
I think that if we gave a strong message to the superintendent, that would be not legally have the impact of an action, but it's probably pretty strong suggestion. And I think that's why he wants feedback on it. Is that the action that the board wants us to take? You know, do we want to go with that requirement?
So I would say that I am not in favor of a mask mandate. I think that the parents and staff, as well as the board, should be able to make a decision about their health care. And there's statistical data that shows that if masks work, then the people that want to wear masks in order to mitigate any catching of COVID, they can. But the research shows that we will get COVID-19. People are going to continue to get that. And so we're not going to be preventing it at all. And I just do not support a across the board mask mandate. And I think we should let the parents, as well as ourselves, as well as our staff, decide if they want to wear a mask, and that I'm fully open to having something put on a door that says that we highly recommend them, but not that it's a mandate.
Colin?
I think, well, I'm not in favor of masks. The communication that body language makes up a very significant portion of communication. So does facial expressions. That eliminates communication between teacher-student. I look at somebody with a mask, I can't tell if they're smiling, frowning. So trust, I think, is then decreased as well, because it doesn't have the opportunity to flourish. As far as it preventing COVID, I could refer back to, my respirator training that I got from the new plant, stating that it's really, unless you have a seal, not going to really do a whole lot for you. It'll catch water droplets, but those water droplets can still go out the sides of the mask just the same. As far as the children with disabilities, hearing impaired, things like that, some of them do read lips, and it's a necessary component for their education as well. There's a lot of people that are in favor of masks, and there's a lot of people that aren't in favor of masks. So to have a blanket policy where everybody is required for a mask to go on that, that side is just treating everybody the same. And I think that parents should have the opportunity to weigh in on their children's health. These are the people that are in charge of the kids, ultimately, and they should be given the option and ultimately the decision as to their children.
Carrie?
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in somewhat differently. It seems to me that our responsibility is, is our main responsibility right now is to safely provide a person-to-person educational environment for every child and every teacher and every staff member. And I think that, the current crisis is really a consequence of, just sort of laissez-faire it, on mitigating and prevention methods. I mean, half the country isn't vaccinated. Half the country doesn't want to wear masks. And so what the consequence of that is that we have a renewed epidemic every bit as strong and ferocious as the one we had in February. Being a historian, that speaks to me in a way that like, boy, you need to kind of pay attention to what's happening on the ground. Most of what we're discussing right now is, really valid stuff. I mean, facial expression is very important. I think having parents involved certainly involved, ultimately responsibly involved in the raising and protection of their children is important as well. It just seems that, we can't just do this as a smorgasbord. I mean, one of the primary functions of government, which we're part of, is to provide an orderly and predictable social setting. So I do think that as much as people don't like it, as much as we'd like to avoid it, the buck stops at trying to preserve an in-person educational experience with students that protects them, the teachers and the staff members, as maximum as possible. And just saying, well, whatever you want. I mean, it's a pretty nice libertarian theory. But honestly, I don't think I'd want to risk my kids to that sort of situation. So I'm very much strongly in favor of the policy proposed and probably in effect by the superintendent.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
I will.
Oh, wait, go ahead, Kathy, as long as you're up there.
Hey guys, as long as I'm up here. I'm always up here. I'm that tall. One of the points that I want to make is as far as making health choices for our children.
Is it her volume or is it her volume?
Just wait a minute.
Okay. Is
Hang
that
on,
better?
we need more volume on that.
Is it better for me?
Go ahead.
All right, we'll give this another shot. Some of the things that we do is we do require kids to wear shoes, for example. So while masks, I know, make it a little bit more difficult for children or anyone to exchange communication, the eyes are the avenue to the soul, right? We see a lot because not our entire face is covered, but we do see eyes. There are certain cultures that are always covered from their nose down, as you're aware, and they manage to communicate. And as far as the vaccinations go, I'm not saying that we require, but I'm just saying about health choices here. We require our kids to be vaccinated with polio. We make these choices for kids to be able to enter school for the greater good. Mask wearing is not about protecting ourselves. It's about protecting those around us. And so for that reason, I mean, do I want choices? Do I like wearing masks? No. Do I want choices? Yes. Would I prefer to make them for my kids? Yes. But this is about the greater good. And I think I would also give back whatever our superintendent decides on mask wearing, whatever he feels is appropriate at this time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And then Meredith, you want to?
Sure. One of the reasons I'm wearing a mask today is because I was in Chicago over the weekend and I don't want to hurt anyone else. And that's exactly what the science points to, is that it's not a protection for yourself. It's very minimal for yourself. It's a protection for others. I know that my child is fully vaccinated at age 13, going to be sitting in a classroom starting next Monday. I know there's other kids in there who are not, and guess what? My kid's gonna wear a mask because he cares about the other kids. It's not all about him, it's not all about me. But I think we need to follow the recommendations of our professionals who have done the research. We're following doctors and physicians at the American Pediatrics Association, American Medical Association, who are saying masking is that mitigation. Because quite frankly, I don't want to do virtual school again. Virtual school stuff. It was good. The teachers did as best they could, but it's not great for the kids. And this is the key to keeping kids in school. So yes, I am definitely in favor of it. I hate it, but I totally agree with it.
Lisa, did you want to?
Sure, I'll be the last one.
And I'll still give others a chance to respond to what they heard.
Mark's the superintendent. We hired Mark to make these decisions. He has every authority to make these decisions. I feel he needs to make this decision, and it's up to him. That's a stand I'll take.
Oh,
Yeah, I guess I would wonder, where, at what point are we just gonna not have masks then? Obviously I'm hearing from the majority of the board that, okay, let's mask up. At what point do we not have masks then? Because if you look at right now, the amount of people that actually have Delta variant COVID in Manitowoc County, the number is significantly small. And if we're going to say, okay, well, if there's 2 cases in Manitowoc Public School District, well, then we'll relax on the masks. I mean, the numbers aren't very high right now. So for us to put forth a mask measure when numbers are relatively low, I think it's putting the cart before the horse a little bit here. Yes, I understand you want to preempt, but at some point, are we getting?
So Colin, what's your number
hang
of
on,
kids
hang
that
on.
go
Wait, let
inside?
Colin finish.
I'm wondering.
Colin, you have more? No, go ahead.
Sure.
Let him finish first.
No, I'm fine.
Go one at a time. Okay. Just one thing, Colin, I know you indicated that the numbers are low, and yet our local health department, their report is coming out every Wednesday now. Last Wednesday's report listed us as high. The burden rate was, I believe, 211.
So the cases
per 100,000. That's a burden rate, and they indicated that our county was at a high level. That report will come out again tomorrow. So I don't know, I guess we can pull data wherever we want, but that's based on what our local health department says, is that it is high. Oh, go ahead, Helen.
Well, I'm just wondering then what that number is. Like, how many kids are we willing to say it's okay for you to catch it? How many adults? Because those would be measures. In my personal opinion, the masks come off after everyone's had the opportunity to vaccinate. And then they've made a choice as a family. And that, to me, my understanding is coming for kids who are younger later this fall. But I think giving everyone the opportunity to be vaccinated before the removal of masks is probably the more appropriate time to remove them. But I just want to know what that measure is. How many kids are we willing to get sick?
I think that's a good point in that we're again making these decisions without any metrics whatsoever. That we're gonna implement something and have no way out of it. Again, like this board did last spring. So we're not using any criteria. It's based on what someone personally believes of how they're going to look at the data. The other thing I would say is that what is not safe, tell me what is not safe about going to school without a mask.
Well, first, I would ask the superintendent to address the issue that you mentioned, that there's no data or it's not supported. He's the one I'm just saying because he's the one making the recommendation, so I'll let him speak as to why he's making the
I
recommendation.
understand that, but I don't want to hear a quote about CDC the Manitowoc Health Department, I don't need to hear that again, but if he wants to.
Yeah, I think that he needs to be given that opportunity
Okay.
because he's making the recommendation. What is that recommendation based on? And while we may not all agree with the reasoning for that, he has the right to make that and to provide that.
So if we're specifically looking at data, the data stream that I have is based on the data that we were at last year. So last year, on 7/28 to 7/10, when this board voted to have a blended learning or a virtual learning option, our burden rate was 102. This year at that same time, that burden rate is 181. Last year at this time, 8/5/18, the burden rate was 132. This year, the burden rate is 221. So we're starting to see a trend that is definitely increasing the number of positive cases within Manitowoc County. That's a trend in addition to personal conversations with health professionals that said, this is the model that we should be using moving forward. Again, I know that this isn't an ideal model. I would prefer, I thought when we had cases that were 0 and 2 and 3 per day, and our burden rate was at 23 in June and early parts of July, that this was behind us and we could move forward. But I also know that that's not the case. And as we move forward, what the rationale that I have that I want us to remember is last year, this administration spent a significant amount of time creating a data points that we would use to move from in-person to face-to-face. And I thought those were well done and researched based on all kinds of information. What we found out in probably January and maybe February that we weren't going to meet those criteria that we had set before, that we weren't going to meet those, even though we had best interest. So we made changes to those so that we could come back at an earlier date than what maybe the data would have said. I am saying to you that I definitely respect all of your opinions and your support. I am not a healthcare professional. So I am going to continue to take the information that I have to recommend from healthcare professionals. So that is also part of that recommendation, in addition to the data that we collected last year, in addition to the data that I'm seeing right now. To follow up, Colin, your question, I think that is going to be a regular conversation about what does health look like. If we see our burden rate move down into the hundreds rate again, or in the 300s and 400s, likely we're going to have some choices about what that looks like. We'll also be able to look at how many students and potential staff members have to be out of school because of the number of positive cases in our buildings. We will continue to track that. What is ultimately a concern is that we can run a school with half of the students in the building. If I have a school of 400 and 200 are out, we can run a school with 200. I can't run a school with half of the staff, which might be, 40 people, half of the staff is 20. I can't run a school. Then we all have to go virtual for a period of time until we come back. So I know that there are pros and cons about whether or not wearing a mask is going to eliminate that. The answer is no. But I do know that it is a level. And we will line up these levels of the best we can do, increase ventilation, hand sanitizing, wear a mask, and distance to the extent possible. We bring a greater barrier than if we don't do any of those. And it allows us to continue to do the things that we're used to and that we look forward to in our schools. I don't want to go back to limiting the number of people who can participate in co-curriculum, not having opportunities for families to engage in school activities, to have students only come part of the day. That is not at all part of what we're looking forward to. So I think this is a strategy that I hope will help us maintain an in-person learning moving forward.
Any other, Colin, go ahead.
Yeah, in reference to, so I heard the comparisons to last year as to where we were at, and noted increase. But last year we were at the same position, and the survey that I had got from you indicated the question was currently the CDC and state and local health officials are recommending but not requiring masks. The district will need to develop a policy for the upcoming year. Do you believe the district should require all students to wear masks during the school day and at school-sponsored events? There were 1,800 responses. These were from the parents. 59.1% said no, while 40.9% said yes.
Okay.
So my take on that is that approximately 60% of the parents of the school district said that they were not in favor of this. So giving an option to those parents as whether you're in favor or against is going to be, I think, a much better approach, because those people that are going to be strongly opposed to the masking of their children will still feel like their voices are heard. And maybe not all, but
Health and safety.
those people that are saying no, I think that there should be masking going on. I feel that this would appease those parents as well. I'm not going to be in favor of telling a parent how to raise their child, what to do with their child medically, or anything of that nature. I believe in a parent's rights to their children.
It's a mask.
Stacy, sorry, I was looking the wrong way.
No, that's okay. So again, I'd like to go back to what Carrie said about safety. And I'm not sure what's not safe about sending our kids to school. You could get hit by the bus by sending your kid to school. There are many safety issues at hand, and the positive cases, because we have these protocols, and I say we as in the city, that if you come in contact with somebody, we test you. If you look at the data that comes locally, of course our cases are positive, higher, because we are testing more. So it's going to keep rising. And so that's the first thing. We're going to have positive tests. If you look at the number of hospitalizations based on that, I believe it was like 1%. And then if you looked at the death rate, and this is currently, it was like 1.1%. And there were 753 people that tested positive. So when you talk about it not being safe, and especially the age group that we're looking at that is not vaccinated, you talk about it's the non-vaccinated, the unvaccinated people that are catching COVID, which means our children. That might be true that the positive cases are going to increase. However, they are not getting, it's not a lethal sickness that the child is getting. There is no data that shows that. So the other thing in regard to not having enough teachers, our teachers have been vaccinated. I sat here and listened to you tell me that vaccinations are the cure-all, and that if we're vaccinated, nobody's going to get sick again. And we don't need masks because we're all vaccinated. And now we're finding out more information that, yes, you're going to get it. And why is that? Because it is a virus. It is a virus, just like the flu is a virus. COVID is going nowhere. It will be here for the rest of our lives. And there will be, like we get a flu vaccine, you will have the option to get a COVID vaccine. And you can choose for yourself if you want that. You can choose if you want a booster. But the data does not support whether the governmental agencies like the Manitowoc Health Department, the CDC, throw them out there, they've been wrong about this. You all took your masks off because they said when you're vaccinated, you don't need to. Our staff was partying up at the wharf, good for them, without masks. I have pictures to document it. There were 5,000 people downtown. Everyone's gonna get COVID. And you all took a mask off when you got vaccinated. Why? Because they told you if you were vaccinated that you were gonna be fine. And now we are going to wait till every child has the opportunity to get vaccinated before we take a mask off. That's, we are supposed to be leaders.
Hang on.
We are supposed to be leaders. We are supposed to be using logic. And the government agencies that you guys are leaning on for your data have been wrong. And so I'm just asking you, if you're gonna make those same arguments over and over and over again, you keep moving the target. There's no reason why I, a parent, a community member, or a staff member should not be allowed to walk into this district without a mask by choice. And all of you that want to wear a mask because you believe that that is the best way to keep you safe or your child safe should have that opportunity.
I'll just make one comment to your comment, Stacy. I would strongly disagree with your comments regarding our health department. I think they've done an excellent job. I'm a member of the Board of Health. I think all of the members of the board, including many physicians, would agree that that the virus is something that's serious. The director herself has an extensive background in infectious disease. And if we can't believe people that deal with those types of things, then we're really in trouble. I mean, but again, I'm speaking as a Board of Health member as well.
And I'm not saying that they're not doing a good job. I know it sounds like that, but they were wrong last year. They're wrong again. And that's all I'm saying. Everyone keeps making a decision based on positive cases. You're not making a decision on how people are asymptomatic or kids are not getting this deathly ill leading to the lethality of it. That's what we're not considering here at all.
Terry.
Well, I'm not exactly sure what you mean they were wrong. Wrong about what? Wrong about the
They were wrong about
the cases were going down. That's all pre-Delta. It's all pre-Delta. I mean, we got mutations happening, and apparently there's another one from South America that's on the way. And the fact of the matter is that we can't just say, gee, what do you feel like on this? And I'd rather you use the term convinced than believe, because this isn't a matter of faith. This isn't a matter of faith. This is a matter of like, gee, we're fairly intelligent people. I think that, and yet we have two sets of facts here, and it makes it very difficult to make a decision on this because there is some credibility. I mean, of course, the mask doesn't protect you. My daughter went to a wedding. There was a wedding that was only open to people that had vaccine, that had been vaccinated. 7 people with masks and vaccinations got mild cases of COVID, Delta COVID. So it's not there's just no and your analogy of well, they could get hit by a bus, but we really do take precautions to have that not happen. And we have to minimize the threat to people's well-being. And it seems to me that we just cannot. I mean, this idea, this sort of libertarian idea, boy, we had a survey and 59% said they were against masks, and 41 said they were for masks. That's hardly an informed decision. It's an opinion. It may be based on, in some cases, real hard information, real knowledge. But it's like I mean, Plato said that democracy was the worst kind of political system there is because it's all based on opinion. Well, we've tried to transcend that. We've tried to say it's not just opinion. And so my processing of this is, I read all the letters. I thought, well, there's certainly something to that. I mean, I'm not just discounting what you say about, well, masks aren't foolproof either. And, you know, but I don't want to not try because it's not just the safety of the kids, but it's the safety of the kids in a real educational environment. I want to protect us against having to go back to virtual. And I remember before we even, well, shortly after I got on the board, there was a demonstration downtown. I went downtown and I talked to the parents that were there, some of whom were students of mine and people that I knew. And they said, oh, you know, this virtual stuff is just not washing. You know, it's just not working. And I said, well, would you be okay if the school system went back to having kids in school with teachers? But if that's to happen, they really have to wear the mask. They really have to wear the mask. I mean, we can't just pretend this thing isn't happening. And most of them said, sure, masks would be fine. It's mostly that we want the kids to be in school, to have an educational experience that really is a kind of a rich and social experience as well as an intellectual one. And I thought, yeah, that's something that I could vote yes on. That's why I'm voting yes. I'm not voting, but that's why I'm supporting.
Okay. I think that's enough. We're starting to go in circles here. We're beating this to death.
To Carrie's.
No, that's enough. We've had enough. You had multiple opportunities to speak, and I'm going to leave that where it is for now. Does the board want to wait until our September 14th meeting? Do you want to have a special meeting prior to that to discuss the issue?
No. Mark has the authority. He's our superintendent.
It doesn't require a vote, it just requires hearing feedback.
Stacy, you had mentioned that.
Yeah, I think it needs to wait. I rather us make the decision as a board. And I also don't like that we're only talking about one COVID protocol.
Well, we were told last time that all.
Let's just hang on. Let's just hang on here. I'm letting Stacy speak, and we're moving on from this subject right now.
Right. I mean, Mark's talking about quarantining, and there's a lot of other COVID protocol that he's going to implement, and that we have no idea what that is. And so I think that this should be tabled and be an actionable item where he can make his recommendation and we can vote on it.
All right, I'll take that into consideration and I'll speak with Mark about that. Probably not today, probably tomorrow.
Didn't we give Mark the authority last year when we had voted? I don't know what the vote count was, possibly unanimous. We'd given him the authority that he wouldn't have to keep coming back to the board to have us make those decisions and then wait another 2 weeks and then he addresses the board. I just think we eliminated that by giving him the authority.
You did, but you did that forever.
But again, as I said,
He now can make any decision.
the board
On the
can,
COVID.
hang on here. The board does have the authority to then act on any decisions that are made by our administration. We can. Whether or not we should, that's another question. Whether or not that's outside of what we're intended to do, but we do have that ability. The law allows us to do that. So for now, I'm going to leave it where it is. We had our discussion and we're going forward with that. I'm going to move on to unfinished business. So I'll turn it over to Carrie because you wanted this item on there, superintendent evaluation.
Probably didn't catch me napping, but we passed a process last week, which apparently is not a policy, but is kind of got the working guts of the policy. On procedure, the very first thing on procedure, number one, the evaluation process will begin in August, which is now, of each school year. At that time, the board and superintendent will meet to review the previous year and discuss the needs, challenges, and goals of the school year ahead. Now, my analogy on that is sort of like, the State of the Union sort of thing. It's like, okay, this is where we are, this is how we got here, and this is what we need to look at. The challenges, goals of the school year ahead. The needs, challenges, and goals of the school year ahead. For the purposes of approaching the approaching year's evaluation, 2 goals will be chosen for specific focus and effort during the upcoming school year. 1 goal will be chosen by the board and 1 chosen by the superintendent. Now, I'm not advocating that we do all that right now. I mean, it does say August, but we've been sort of tardy on this whole process anyway. But I would suggest that with the board's consent, that for the first meeting in September, that we have a written document from the superintendent. I mean, we don't have to have that, but to review the previous year and discuss needs, challenges, and goals, I think that would be the sort of the opening statement by the superintendent. And if you could write that, whatever you want to review about the year before, what the problems were, what the challenges were, what worked and what didn't, and then indicate what we've got ahead in your vision of things. That would help us to have a kind of a ground zero for starting the upcoming year's evaluation process. And then at that meeting, I would like it to be on the agenda that 2 goals be put up as action items, or 1 goal be put up as an action items, and the superintendent at that point indicate what he has chosen to be the second one. Is that clear? I mean, is that?
Sure. Is there anything that you wanted us to take action on here on this, or is it just that that's how you're going to proceed with the evaluation?
I think that's how we're going to proceed.
Okay.
I don't think we need to, if that's in agreement.
Well, I mean, you can do that. You can ask the superintendent to provide information
Okay.
regarding
But
the
that's only me
evaluations.
as a
That's what you're
person.
looking for him to do.
It's only me as
Right.
a person or a
You
chair.
get that, right? Yeah. Okay.
I think,
Well, I mean, you're chair of the personnel, right?
I'm chair of personnel, yeah, but
Okay.
that's, but.
You're
we
doing
are-
the evaluation.
The job
document.
description under that doesn't say that we're all together in charge of the implementation of this, and to be the kind
Well, the board does the
the
evaluation.
shepherds
so.
of the process.
Stacy, what did you want to add to that?
yeah, I was just gonna say, Carrie, one of the things that I'm still kind of unclear about is, when do we want to collect the data, right? So we're all gonna fill out, the evaluation form that I had created.
Right.
Right.
We're gonna do that, for the first evaluation process. I mean, that is step number, the superintendent steps, a formative evaluation is when we do that questionnaire.
Okay, so I guess what I'm wondering is because I think December, right, is when we have to
Right.
do the other.
Exactly.
Okay, so in December, are we doing an evaluation on the preceding year and evaluating him?
No, we're not doing it on the preceding year. We're evaluating this year, this school year. From the day that school starts until.
Okay, so then my recommendation would be, as a member of the committee, is that we actually do this twice.
Yeah, we do it twice.
And that we would do the evaluation twice. So we're gonna look at, so what you're talking about, Mark has gotten no feedback from us since his last evaluation was done.
Right.
So and if we're going to only look at this school year, which means 3 months, right? In December, is that what you mean?
Yep.
Okay, I don't think that's fair that he hasn't gotten any feedback on everything that's gone on in the since his last evaluation, which I don't know what day that was. So my suggestion would be is that we do 2 evaluations. One is we fill out, give him feedback for the information from since his last evaluation period. And then in December, we evaluate the 3 months
Yeah.
and set the goals at that time for what it's going to be going into the next year.
Well, I guess I was working with a slightly different concept. I was, the tabula rasa, I thought was, well, because we're starting this process has never been done. This process has never been done. There's been evaluations.
Correct.
But this policy was passed, I think, in March, right?
March
That we-
23rd.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was passed in March. And
It's
so
just a question, because again, we're getting a little bogged down here.
to include stuff that
We're getting a little bogged down here. Let's
existed
move
before.
forward with something rather than just keep
Yeah,
running around.
let's sort of-
Is the personnel committee meeting anytime soon?
Well,
I'm not,
We're trying to pick a date.
Yeah. But not for this.
why don't at that meeting, why don't you get this together and then let's
We gotta
just
do that.
get it done? Well, but it doesn't sound like it is, to me. I mean, we have someone who has a differing opinion that's on the committee. You're on the personnel, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so, let's just get it done. We've been messing around with this for 2 years.
Yeah.
I'd like to see something get done, and it's only fair to the superintendent or to the person being evaluated that we do something with it, I'll get you a comment.
Well, the reason why I'm talking right now is because it's August.
Yeah, but I mean, let's just figure something out right now to move forward so that we get this done. Not that we keep talking about it and saying, well, we should do this. When are we going to do it?
I think a solution would be is that we've already asked Mark to come up with and it's written in there what artifacts we're looking for. So he's able to evaluate himself. I think we send out the evaluation and compile the data right away, and everyone can evaluate Mark, and we'll look at it in committee and make a presentation about the results.
Are you okay with that, Mark? I mean,
I guess I'm not okay with that.
Well, I guess I have a couple questions. First, I would just say from contract, typically the evaluation begins July 1st to June 30th. Like that, we don't really wait till the school year, but that's a typical piece. I think it is, I'm a little maybe cautious about having board members who weren't here during the entire time provide evaluation feedback for me. So, if the evaluation is from whatever, August or April something till now, I think that's fine. But I think if you're going to ask board members to give me feedback when they weren't here, that becomes probably just
I think
anecdotal.
we voted on that, didn't we? The evaluation process will begin, it says, in August.
well, that's the process, but that doesn't speak to the time frame that you're looking at using information from,
Well, and again,
Oh,
I'm okay
God. I mean,
with generalizing.
This is like angels on the head of a pin. I mean, the evaluation process begins in August. It begins in August. That's what it
We're just
says.
making
I
this
mean, I'm,
way too difficult.
kind of a fundamentalist on that sentence.
It shouldn't be this difficult.
Um,
Colin,
that
go ahead,
time,
Colin.
the
You've been waiting for-
superintendent
I'm gonna let
would
Colin.
meet
I'm gonna let Colin go.
And
Okay.
review the previous year and discuss the needs, challenges, and goals of the school year ahead.
But we haven't done any of
I
that.
don't think that's difficult to.
Colin, go ahead.
Okay, so in listening to what you're presenting, first off, to me, I'm not clear on what it is that is. If you could, I would appreciate it. If you could just maybe send some of that to everybody, so one can read through it. I can listen to things, and that'd be great. But to actually be able to read through, I get clarity from it a little easier. And then two, there's a timeline. If we could get a timeline as to what it is.
Colin, it's all in here. It's all in here.
Fine, but what I'm asking is just some timeline, clear cut of what you want to do, because all I hear is, well, we could do it, we could have it by this time, we could have it by this time. Well, we should have it by this time, we should have it by this time. And I don't feel like there's any clarity.
I didn't say
to what
any
it
of
is.
that. I didn't say any of
Well,
that. I said,
maybe it's the impression that I'm getting from what you're stating. So if I could just get a timeline as to what you want to put forth, I would feel much more comfortable in.
Colin, the timeline is procedure. Number one, the evaluation process begins in August.
And I believe that was
Two, the
presented.
formative evaluation of the superintendent's efforts and progress pertaining to job performance. The yearly chosen goals, et cetera, et cetera. That will happen
So
in
I'm trying to
December, it
find
says.
it.
It says it happens in December.
Got it in print on a board report, and I'm trying to find the date because we have all seen it.
Dave, may I speak, please?
And it's all over, oh, I'm sorry.
Kathy, did you want to speak?
Yeah, guys, my recollection of this whole process was that, first of all, we're required, as you all know, once a year to evaluate our superintendent. That has to be done by January, according to law, because if we choose to continue his contract or not, that decision has to be made by the end of January. So that's why it has stated in there, I think it's like the second week of January, it has to be completed by. I think that may be part of why it says the process begins in August, so that people have time to respond, to think about what those goals are, what has happened in the previous months or year. But the secondary evaluation was, it's about setting those goals. So there's a way to like touch base in the middle of the year, right? So the initial idea was to do that in like July or June, so that we could sit there and have a discussion. Hey, how's it going? What do you see the goals should be? But the actual evaluation that's given with the formally in January with a president and another person present is the one we have to meet by law. Or I don't even think it's by law, but I mean that's what's always been here.
All
right?
that is
That's
step
the
by step
precedent.
described in this
Hang on.
policy.
This is like a secondary step though that we've added. That's what was passed in March. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but let's just get this
I
going.
just want to do the August part.
Let's just get this
Can
going.
I clear up what I was saying?
Yeah.
So I'm not asking for the timeline of what you're proposing. I'm asking for the timeline in rollout. So you're putting forth when we would have this metric, when we can expect the metric to go forward, when we do when we have those, timelines of, okay, this metric, we collect data, this metric is presented to Mark, and go forward from there. Because I guess I'm trying to understand when it is that this process is going to be put in.
And if we have that, let's just follow it. And if we're not following it, well, we do have the ability to modify the policy. I mean, we can, the board can, but I don't like to do that because that gets us to where we are right now. We're not going anywhere. Let's go somewhere.
I guess my interpretation of this, and it differs a little bit with Stacy's, in that I thought since we were starting fresh with a fresh policy that was approved in March, that there would be no, there would be no kind of like retro on this, other than the superintendent would have the opportunity to review the previous year and discuss the needs, challenges, and goals of the school year ahead. So that we had an orientation, essentially. But then the action item would be that there's two goals that will be focused on in the upcoming school year.
Okay, and when do you want us to set that goal?
I want us to set that goal at the first meeting in September.
Okay, then let's move this on to September 14th, and let's move on here.
All right.
Stacy, when do you want
Any
that
other?
survey done?
There's no survey being done.
Well, so we don't return that then?
I think, we'll meet as a committee and we'll.
I would strongly encourage personnel to meet, and it certainly sounds like
Okay,
you would
so,
want to do that.
all right.
Okay, let's move on, and there's an item here for future meeting dates, so. Academic achievement gap, did you want to speak to that at all, Mark?
Yeah, I think there's an opportunity for us in the coming months to really start focusing on the academic achievement gap that we probably haven't been talking about as much maybe as we need to. We've heard about it in some very specific different pieces. We've shared some outside organizations that we had come in, and I think it's fair to say that as of right now, we don't have an agreement with that outside organization, but I think there is definite opportunities for our district to continue to look at how we're educating all of our kids and what we need to do very specifically to help improve our students' successes and outcomes. I've talked with Dave a little bit about the board coming together, and again, I don't want to add meetings, but in a opportunity to engage in a conversation about what does a plan look like for us to engage in this gap that we're seeing, and would there be a group that could help paint the picture with the board, for the board to then be able to reflect back and say, yes, that sounds like the direction that we want to go, or I would agree with that, but I don't agree with this, and kind of move us forward. Because it's fair to say that in many of our conversations, there's lots of things, and I appreciate everybody's passion about all kinds of things. In the end, student outcomes and successes have to be our number one focus. And much of the time that we spend are on things that aren't directly related to student education and learning, and that teaching and learning opportunity. So I would propose, working with the board president, that we would come together and work with an outside group for a one board meeting period of time, of which the main focus would be our academic achievement gap, and looking at what we are going to do and a plan that we would have to move forward, so that the board would at least be understanding and first and foremost be on board. The reason I use that is because I don't feel it would be a great idea for, again, right now, for me to create an idea and then bring it to the board and have that idea recreated. I think the board needs to be involved in the creation of that idea and start from that model. And again, we would work out the time. So I guess that's just the piece that I'd say is, before I move forward, I'd like to try to organize that. Yes.
What outside group are you referring to?
So there's all kinds of different groups. We look at
No, that we've used before.
the route we used before.
DeRoot. Okay,
Yes.
so my understanding about DeRoot was that it wasn't about the achievement gap, it was rather the disproportional number with regard to EBD.
No, had nothing to do with that. The route was here for us to learn a little bit about our achievement gaps and what kind of things that we could do as professionals, both administrators and teacher leaders, and within equity and engagement. So we did not add the route because we were identified as a disproportional. There's a plan about disproportionality that is separate, and I don't believe, I could look over to Joanne, mentions the route whatsoever. Does not.
It does mention, I think it's number 15 on there, that you're gonna hire an outside consultant regarding that had.
That did not, the root connection came well after that plan was approved and did not come to my department. I mean, so it's not connected to that.
So what was the thing that was in there that talked about white supremacy? Why was that in there?
So I remember that, without having that in front of me right now, I remember that there's a place where some ideas are listed in our plan of topics that may be discussed with some people. And so there was a short list of examples, but they were listed as examples that would fall under equity, the umbrella of equity.
You're talking about 13 with the training?
I think it was
Sorry, 13.
It was 13, yeah.
Yeah, those are, and that 13, which I've looked at in the past, that small committee who worked on that action plan for disproportionality quickly brainstormed a list for us to submit as possibilities. They were not guarantees. They're examples for the reviewers of that action plan.
Again, what my purpose is to focus on student achievement, to work on how we might be able to work on those gaps, and to make sure that our board is understanding of the direction we would potentially move, so that we don't have a misunderstanding of a group that and the direction we're trying to go.
And again, I would just add that in regard to those achievement gaps, we hear from the public regarding the state testing data, which I told you is, a single test, but we know from the data that closing those gaps will improve the data because those gaps are bringing some of that data down. And that will improve that. And that seems to be a focus from members of the public is that number is low. Well, we know that we've been identified with achievement gaps. We also know that if we can close those gaps, it will help us in improving those numbers. Go ahead, Colin.
I really like the idea of, the board getting together, to brainstorm, to address the achievement gaps. I know a lot of people, that is a very significant concern, in Manitowoc Public School District as far as the achievement gaps. I'm not sure if I heard that, correctly, that you would seek to root again. I would hope that would not be the case based off of what we saw on their Facebook page. I thought that was very, it did not speak to what I think Manitowoc Public School District wants to uphold as their beliefs and standards. But I do like the idea of, us as a collective trying to address the achievement gaps.
I guess I would just respond. I too wish they would use different choice. It's a social media post. We didn't have control over what they chose, but I would articulate that the level of professional development instruction that myself and a number of our administrators and teachers leaders had was outstanding. And it wasn't on the model of trying to identify supremacy or white supremacy. That was not the model we were looking at internal biases, how we look at the world, and what we might do to enable to encourage our students and our families to be better. So I don't want to go down that road again. That's not the group that we would, again, look to assign. But first, I would want the board to be on board with that so we know what direction we're going. I think that would be a positive part in building that community within our group and then extending it out to our staff. And before we do professional development and opportunities with that, I would want this group to do that sometime in the next, 30 to 40 days.
So Mark, is the choice of the group going to be the board making that decision as a board?
Well, yeah, so what I would say is I would bring a group together. They would be the ones providing some of the professional development training to the board. And if the board was satisfied, we'd continue. If the board was not satisfied, we'd stop. And again, the group that I would bring in has had successes with other school districts, closing the achievement gap and rising all students. So I have done research, I've reviewed, I've talked to lots of people, I've listened to proposals, and I've circled down to one group that would start, but I would not extend the contract beyond in evening with the board. That's the understanding until the board said, all right, I think this sounds like what we want to do. Let's move this forward.
Because I think it needs to be a consensus decision amongst the board members. So everybody's involved, and when we make a decision, all the board members are involved and they know what's going on.
That's what my goal is.
Thank you, Mark.
Colin, did you want to?
Yeah, would you be willing to let us know what that you're looking to
Sure,
organizations so we can look into them as well?
Yeah, sure. Well, as soon as after I talk with the board president and we agree that this is the kind of the model I have, like a proposal, and I can share it with the board.
Thank you.
Mark, I have a question for you. I feel almost stupid asking this, but I guess I just want to hear it from you. When we talk about closing our achievement gaps, we're not talking about lowering the standard for, say, our high performing academic students so that the gap is closed, correct? We're talking about raising those up who could perform better. Is that agreed upon, or are you just trying to make it more even?
Oh yeah, so great question. Thank you for that. What I'm looking to do, we're not lowering the standard. We're going to keep the standard at the same level, and by trying to use different strategies and methods, we are going to move students who have not had success to greater success and continue to provide students opportunities to move higher. So again, using our Manitowoc ships analogy, I'm trying to raise the tide so all are moving forward, right? Right now, we find that there are targeted groups who are not having success within our academic or social settings. we want to make changes so that all students make those successes, all students, right? I just want to say this, that, all students.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from Mark?
I would just want, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, I mean, this sounds like a curriculum committee issue. Is there some reason why it wouldn't start there and the board members can come and discuss it?
Yeah, I think we've had some conversations about that. I think we were trying to involve all the board members as a full board as opposed to just 3 members.
And is this going to be a presentation?
Probably a workshop more than a presentation, an engaging conversation about here's what we think, here's what we see, here's what ideas we have for moving the district forward and engaging in the conversation with them.
Did you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I do. So I know that there's achievement gaps on both in both areas of students with disabilities and behavioral issues and students that are in full regular attendance. Would these be to all students, or is it, I guess, targeted to a specific area?
So when I say achievement gaps, we're talking about a wide variety, okay? So it could be socioeconomic and their learning and educational outcome successes versus students who don't have socioeconomic background, right? We know that your parents' careers and positions has nothing to do with your intelligence. So we would say those should be similar. If they're not similar, what things are going on that we can help support that so that they can be better? It could be students who come to us and speak a different language. It could be students in a ethnic genre. It's all students. And so what we would do, and we have done that, the state has given us data on subgroups is what they call it, right? So subgroups could be special education, ELL, could be an ethnicity. It could be, again, free and reduced. It could be gender. All kinds of pieces within that go back to a number of different targets. One target could be just purely academic, right? Another target could be attendance. Another target could be post-secondary education. I mean, there's all kinds of pieces there. But what we're trying to do is improve everybody, right? Improve every single person's opportunities to be successful in this district by focusing first on the professional practices and skills that we're teaching for all kids.
All right. Thank you. We'll move on to new business. We have an item from the curriculum committee.
Yes, so, Mr. Steve Peck posed the question to us. There's a track meet just over the border in Gurnee.
Cross country.
Cross country, sorry. That he and the coaches are interested in having the kids attend, for a different kind of competition. It's on Saturday, September 18th, and anytime we have travel outside of the state, the board is required to approve it, or disapprove it. We've read in board book all of the information about the trip, and I guess I would entertain a motion.
Well, it's all, yeah, we don't need that.
Oh, yes,
It
we
comes
did
from the
that
committee, but
already.
I would ask for any discussion. The only thing I would say, I know I got an email, and perhaps all of you did, from one of the parents, and I've officiated multiple times in Illinois, and they've had different types of restrictions and different types of problems, and I would hope that we would be aware of those issues up until the time that we might leave, and that if we need to, we would decline attending that. I would assume we do that anyways, but I want to make certain that the individual's concerns are brought up here. And I completely agree with her point. I understand that. So I'll approve this, but I'm hoping that we follow through and pay attention to what's going on in Illinois at the time. So anybody else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion carried. Thank you, Meredith. And then the other is, actually Lori needs to know this one. There's a workshop on October 5th, 2021 at Mill Home Supper Club in Kiel. We've held that there quite a few years. If anyone is interested in going, let Lori know about that. So it's a good meeting. Usually John Ashley's there, right? I don't know if our rep is elected this year or not. Andrew Mertz from Reedsville is our area rep. He may or may not be up for election. I don't know. If it is, we have to elect someone then. But it's a good place to collect information from other school districts in our area and talk to people and their needs. Okay, future meeting dates. Personnel probably is going to meet. Budget and finance, anything, Angela?
Next Wednesday, the 1st of September, we have a meeting at
Okay.
4 o'clock.
Curriculum
September 16th, thank you. I didn't think of it.
and buildings and grounds, okay. And then I'm going to ask the executive committee to meet.
Can I just back up?
Go ahead.
Okay,
Sorry.
we were discussing some issues over at Washington.
Right,
Can we have a meeting and maybe,
yeah, I won't have a meeting between now and the next board meeting,
okay,
but I do have that on my list.
you do,
Yeah.
okay,
Is that,
great.
is that
I
what-
think of those
Okay.
in terms of the next, before the next meeting.
Yep.
So I hadn't intended that, but I will be scheduling something, yeah, thank you.
Okay, but I'd like to get the executive committee together. One of the things that I guess has been pointed out to me is we've had a lot of requests for information from board members that we don't typically have. And I've looked at a lot of school districts have a policy regarding board member information requests. And what it doesn't restrict your ability to request information. We can't do that. What it does though is it delineates between asking for it as a private citizen and as a board member. One of the responsibilities you have when you're elected is you become attached to that office. And you're no longer attached as a private citizen. You can still do those things as a private citizen, but if you're collecting information for the purpose of the board, then the board needs to be actively involved in that. And I'll just bring it up at the executive board. We'll discuss it. And if the board chooses it, it may move forward, it may not, but it's a policy we don't have that many districts have. And my copy comes from Sheboygan. So, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I can send you a copy of this just to see what I would be presenting that'll be up on board book because we always put those documents up. Again, it's just for discussion. So I'll get back to you as to a date we can do that. And that would be the only item that would be on the agenda for that. Our next board meeting is scheduled for September 14th, but it may be necessary for us to meet prior to that because we have some requests here for addressing the mask issue prior to September 4th. Is that what I'm hearing? Do you think, we're either going to wear them until then or the board's going to meet and maybe either
I'm open to
approve that or, say, no, that's not the direction we want to go.
I'm open to meeting on any of that stuff, but I think everybody's pretty clear on my stance on that.
Well, yeah, and I get that. That's why I'll talk to Mark. I'll talk it over with Mark and then I'll let you know what I decide to do if I want to set up another meeting. So
It would be my.
prior to the 14th,
I think for parents to be able to plan, we need to go with what the superintendent hopefully puts out by, I don't know. They need to know what they're doing, right? And we're less than a week out.
I get the feedback, I got the feedback from the board. I hear you.
I do have one more thing about the agenda item for future meeting dates.
Okay.
So the streaming of the meetings, I was curious as to, one, we have, I think we put a directive that we wanted the meetings to be streamed for both committee and general. And we've had a couple in the future where the meetings have had some technical issues as far as those being streamed or whatnot. Are we still pursuing better technology for that? I remember when we first came aboard, that was kind of something. I haven't heard anything since.
Thank you, Fred. We've accepted a bid, and at this point, we're patiently waiting for the company to install the equipment that they bid on. So they assured us that it's going to happen, they said, by the end of August. I'm a little worried about that not happening, but we have already got quotes. We got 2 quotes. We got a bid. We accepted the bid, and we're waiting for the contractor to finish the work. So we're kind of at the whim of their finishing the work. It's not maybe highest priority as we'd like right now. Thank you.
Otherwise, the next item is to go into closed session. Now, I'm not available to stick around for closed session. It's up to you guys if you want to proceed. We don't have to, we're not required to go into closed session. We can add this to the agenda for the next meeting. I wouldn't suggest that this is a high priority issue that we're discussing. It's the contract, some modifications perhaps to the contract. Nothing that I would call significant. So it's up to you. Again, I'm gonna have to go.
I would support putting it on a different agenda.
Should we just bypass that? Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you. Damn, I'm stealing my check.
You gotta get 1:30.
Older one.
Yeah.
You need me signing this?
Yeah.